Your chair's up against mine, so you can't swing because it'll make noise.
Challenge accepted.
It's not a challenge, Liam. Welcome to In Bits, the podcast that deconstructs our digital lives. I'm Nicola.
And I'm Liam.
And we're both lecturers in IEDT, teaching psychology and cyberpsychology. So Liam, what are you in bits about today?
I'm in bits about persuasion, or how we look at influence online. So I have a lot to unpack. I'm going to kind of intro persuasion in a couple of areas. I'm going to focus on it. Maybe with influencers, and we'll pick like a bit of positive, bit of negative to have a nice balance. Mm-hmm. We'll touch on a little bit of misinformation and disinformation, but I want to keep that separate because there's too much to discuss there. That's an episode in itself.
That's like multiple episodes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So if we start at the beginning of what persuasion is, or the ways in which we see persuasion online, okay? Persuasion is very broad. So persuasion is trying to change an attitude or a behavior specifically, if we look at it from a psychological perspective. So if I can change your attitude towards something, I should be able to impact your resulting face-to-face behavior in an online market or a consumer-based market. We see this across numbers of different websites, okay?
I feel like 98% of everything online is trying to persuade you of something.
Yeah, well, whether you're aware of it or not, whether it's an implicit attitude, so something that's below the surface, or an explicit attitude, so something you're going to be quite overt to discuss. We see it in educational websites for sure. We try to introduce elements of persuasion. It's all over online marketing. So at a macro level, so like Amazon, for example, do this so well. You have your individual kind of marketing. So like you purchase a product and then your algorithm will suggest similar products to someone else who's similar to you has also purchased. There's a whole technological aspect to it, but it's also areas to take away the difficulties that we often will sometimes experience. So things like, I don't have the same technological skills, these kind of one-click baskets, saving my credit card details, which you never should. All of these kind of tools or procedures to make it easier for us to make that particular purchase. Okay, so like these are
frictionless buying.
Frictionless buying, but also like providing us with kind of save for later baskets, or like the microsuasions we talk about. So like the handbag that you have in your shopping cart that you get an email about because you forgot to purchase it. Something like these prompts and probes will eventually persuade us to do something.
Why do I feel like you're speaking directly to me with that particular one?
These are all of my examples are targeted. So the purpose of any persuasion is to get us to purchase, say, a product or an item. Okay, so there's four main methods to how we will typically do this. So according to Fogg, Fogg has a behavior model back from 2007. So this is quite old now, but it's still really, really relevant. So we firstly have to increase self-efficacy. So someone's knowledge or skills to either feel more productive, feel more in control. So we've spoken about that already in terms of like frictionless carts, providing tailor-specific information to their needs. So knowing what product or service they might potentially want.
So personalization, but kind of making it as seamless as possible at the same time. Decision-making tools, so product recommendations, comparison tools and websites, and depending on the level of information we have, they will also alter. So we don't simply just make decisions off comparison-based websites. It depends on the type of product that we're using. And then simply simplifying that process again, so that save the basket for later. Yeah.
Okay. That's a static format of website. Okay. It's not particularly appealing if we don't engage with our like Amazon through an Instagram profile or through a TikTok profile. We use someone else. And that someone else that I'm referring to is obviously an influencer or someone who has some form of persuasion message, whether they overtly refer to themselves as an influencer or a content creator. We do know that they have a difference on our buying behavior. Okay,
not all of us, Liam.
Well, is Nicole impacted by buying behavior? I think she is.
Maybe.
I think I'm going to talk about influencers in a sec. So how much do you think this creator economy is worth?
Jesus, I don't know. I'd say it's huge. Like $1 billion or more.
$1 billion or more?
Yeah.
Is that it?
I've no idea. Like, do you even know what a billion is? Like, I can't even comprehend what a billion is. It's so unknowable because it's so huge. I have no idea.
So the current creator economy, so this includes influencers, is worth 250 billion.
I was slightly off.
Yeah, just a little bit. Now, so that's at the moment. So that's in 2025.
Okay.
How much do you think it's going to be worth by 2027? So this is Goldman Sachs who are making these predictions.
I imagine it's growing continuously.
Yeah.
So, what did you say? 250 billion?
Yeah.
What? Yeah. I don't know. 280.
280. You're very conservative.
I have no. That's an awful lot of money.
So Goldman Sachs have
It's like
said
7 Elon Musks.
Yeah, so they estimate that it's going to grow, not grow, double by 2027, so up to 500 billion.
Christ.
So this is just, it shows you, this is where marketing is taking place. This is where influence is particularly happening on an ongoing basis. Now, in terms of where is influence taking place? So what platforms do you use?
Oh, social media, for sure.
Which
I mean,
ones?
it's always happened on TV, adverts, poster, like billboards, magazines, all of that stuff. And that's still happening, I think. Like, look at George Clooney with Nespresso ads on TV and stuff. I don't have a TV, but I think he still does those.
He does, yeah. Ava Longoria does them now with him as well.
And like perfume ads and things like that. But a huge amount of it's on social media now. And like, I wouldn't see a lot of it because I would only see the people that I follow that are doing it. But there's people I've probably never even heard. There's definitely people I've never heard of who are influencing.
Okay, I'm gonna
Obviously,
give
when
you
the
some in a
market's
few.
250 billion, I'm not following them all.
Yeah. So now, in terms of the spaces or the social spaces, so social networking websites that are predominantly used, Instagram is still the largest market. So they make up a share of 1.35 billion users.
Wow.
YouTube, as of last week, was 868 million users. TikTok are still a little bit behind. They're only at 720.
Only.
Yeah. So these are the three main markets. Now, who are the predominant users of those three main markets?
Young people.
Young people.
I'd say more women than men on probably Instagram. I don't know about TikTok though.
TikTok is fairly balanced. A lot of younger males.
Yeah.
Now, Instagram is a massive market. There was a shift of, I'm going to say older, like people in their 30s and above, who shifted from Facebook, who shifted from Facebook over to Instagram because Facebook was seen as this kind of static platform by comparison when Meta rebranded. And originally launched Instagram. YouTube has kind of not really changed in terms of how it's been used. And TikTok obviously has exploded in that space. And I think part of the discussion around the doubling of that content creator market is that we're continuing to see platforms grow and expand. So X obviously changing, not really having any impact in terms of content creator market, but obviously think platforms like Blue Sky will.
Is there much on Snapchat?
So there are sponsored ads. We'll look at it there's a few of the influencers we're going to chat about.
Yeah, but it's not as big,
It's not nearly as big. It doesn't allow the same kind of metrics certainly that Instagram allows. I don't know if you've ever tried to create a research advert. I have through Instagram, and there's a lot you can do in terms of recruitment and filing down your demographic. That's obviously the space that they that is their market. Now, so while it's doubling, the influencer market has actually dropped. It was at 49% of an increase in 2020. That has slowed to 13.74.
Okay.
So this isn't actually that the influencer market is getting smaller.
It's just
leveling
growth.
off.
Yeah.
So we've seen a huge expansion across a number of different areas in terms of like makeup, gaming, unboxing videos, which are particularly at younger people. I don't know if you've watched an unboxing video before.
Like once or twice just to see what they wear. Yeah.
Like I
Very
think
exciting stuff.
They're really helpful. Like I follow, this is so boring. I follow gardening influencers, and this is just part of my algorithm, and I've accepted it now. I'm gonna like date us. It's springtime at the moment, and I'm being told when to do specific things in the garden, and I'm like, I don't have time for this.
I love how different our algorithms are.
It's dogs and gardening at the moment. That's about it. Like, it's very happy space. But obviously there's different influencers. So I follow like health or fitness influencers. I follow different kind of chefs in relation to this kind of like healthy eating styles. I don't follow anyone in fashion. Do you follow any fashion or lifestyle influencers?
Yeah, but I also follow a bunch of gym and fitness ones, and my Instagram definitely thinks I'm a gym bro, the kind of ads they serve me. They also seem to think I'm like a farmer. I keep getting tractor ads as well. But yeah, they think I'm a gym bro most of the time. I don't know. Instagram doesn't know me very well.
Specific. And then there are influencers or content creators that focus on like family lives, parenting. So we see that there's a shift right from young kind of adolescent right the way through to older adult. Like my mom is on Instagram and she will use it. She follows different influencers. She uses it like any other, to be honest, adolescent or like anyone in their 20s. She uses it the same way that I do. And then she will share like stuff all the time. And she uses it like any other user. So I don't think age is a relevant factor in any of this. There is a very famous researcher who looks at persuasion. So it's Robert Cialdini. His principles of persuasion have been around for quite some time. They've been expanded upon and they are relevant to general persuasion or influence online, but also how influencers use them through platforms like TikTok.
You're going to be hearing about these a lot because they come up in so much stuff. They come up in misinformation and disinformation. They come up in cybercrime. They're just so useful and so apparent in different areas.
But they're really, really relevant. So he has 7 principles. We'll touch on them, but I'm specifically going to apply them to different influencers. So we'll see how much influencer knowledge you have.
Not much, I would say.
So before that, I want to ask, have you purchased anything online that you absolutely did not need? And what led you to that purchase? So I would like, if you need to use a pseudonym, you can.
No.
I want the more ridiculous, the better.
Have I purchased something? Of course I have. I am a ridiculous online shopper. What have I bought that I didn't need? Like so much of what I buy, I don't need. What's the most ridiculous thing I've ever bought? Like everything I've bought has been fun and useful. I bought a really cool thing that was like an electric blanket, but it's a small one that just goes around your waist and it heats you up during the winter. And when you're working at home, it's brilliant.
Okay, I'd be kind of scared to use that.
No, it's deadly. I bought loads of cat stuff. I bought lots of stuff for my cats that were a bit ridiculous, but they weren't for me. The cats enjoyed them.
You don't follow, obviously, any like cat influencer?
No, most of my Instagram is cat videos, but I don't actually follow. Oh no, I follow Owl Kitty, but they're not an influencer. They're just a creator.
Okay. I really would like a cat to have its own platform and sell products.
They do.
Okay.
They do. Okay. See, you're missing a whole influencer market here. Like Grumpy Cat, and there's a whole bunch of different famous cats, some of whom have died now, but they would have had like partnerships with different cat products and things like that. Like the cat photographer and the kitten lady, they're a couple who rescue cats, and they definitely have had product partnerships.
I am going to have to spend my afternoon doing something completely different and very unproductive. I have a couple of examples. So I bought like reusable coffee pots that are like aluminium. They're absolutely useless and they just actually end up damaging the machine. I did buy them
for my husband and they did not work. Yep.
Yeah, they're not great. I bought cable tidies. My Instagram algorithm obviously clearly knew that I was untidy somehow. It was like, oh, academic, messy. Yeah. And then I bought like, during COVID, I bought like exercise equipment. Some of it was really helpful and useful. The most basic stuff was great. And then anything that was far too advanced was just simply a waste of money. So I've done those. Some of those are, well, the coffee pod one is, I suppose, was influenced. The other ones were just like need or necessity. So like Fogg's principles that we spoke about before. So Cialdini has 7 different principles. So reciprocity is the first. Yes, I should get a gold star for that. The dyslexic in me is very
hard
happy.
to pronounce.
Scarcity, authority, consistency, liking, social proof, and unity. So unity is the most recent of these principles, and it focuses on like the sense of community and belonging that we have online, and kind of this shared kind of purpose, really. So these are some of the reasons why we might say yes to requests. Okay, so why we buy when we potentially don't need to. So like my coffee pods or any of the products we really don't need, and we feel kind of a bit of guilt or resentment afterwards for buying them.
The super fluffy cat bed that I got my cats that they were afraid of and I had to give to somebody else.
But they just wouldn't get in it.
Yeah, they were terrified of it. Yeah, it was too fluffy. Anytime they went near it, the fluff kind of like waved in the wind and they got completely freaked out. Okay. I donated it to somebody's dog instead who loved it.
Yeah, that's why dogs are better. So I have real life examples of different influencers across these principles. This is not a critique of these influencers or how they do it. It's actually positive in terms of a critique because they're showing their business acumen. It's not from a manipulative perspective, really importantly. So reciprocity is all about giving something back, getting something in return. So in a face-to-face environment, that's here's your product you've just purchased. Here's a lovely free sample for you to try. Right the way from going around Tesco to purchasing a fancy product and getting a load of free product from it.
And it could be as simple as giving somebody a compliment so that they feel like they need to give one back, right?
It can. In restaurants, it can be something as simple as like giving additional mints. That was the original piece of research.
Yes.
In terms of increasing tips. Now, do you know who Zoella is, or Zoe?
I have heard of Zoella. I know zero about her, but I have heard of her.
She's a lifestyle influencer. She has a very abysmal 7 million followers on Instagram.
Oh,
I know. But she offers exclusive discounts only to her followers. Okay, so this is the reciprocity aspect. These codes are actually linked to her, so there's obviously
she gets kickback.
Yeah, she gets a bit of kickback, which is grand. We're all about a payday. That's fine. But she creates no sense of obligation to her followers to kind of follow her content. These are just there as an additional kind of, here you go for being so loyal. So these encourage people to then make a purchase. So there's nothing kind of sinister in reciprocity. It's kind of quite an open kind of transaction. Have you purchased anything based off reciprocity before?
I have definitely used discount codes from an influencer before, yes.
Okay.
So one of the fashion people I follow has discount codes. That's great. And I actually only followed her because of the discount codes because my friend told me about her.
Oh, okay. But like the reciprocity was the draw. That's absolutely fine. I have an influencer that you probably never heard of before, Kylie Jenner.
Oh yeah, no clue. Even I know who she is.
Scarcity is a principle that creates a sense of urgency. So this is right the way from I'm going to buy a bus ticket, a plane ticket. There's only 2 seats left at that particular fare. And we are suckers we assume that there's only 2 seats left at that fare. Yeah. That's not the case, okay?
Yeah, there could be 100 seats left at a cheaper fare, but there's only 2 at this fare.
Yeah. So Kylie does this quite a lot with like makeup products, has been doing it for years, and it's like she was born with Cialdini's principles in her hand. So she's the youngest ever billionaire. She was at the age of 21. She has 400 million followers and she charges 2.4 million per post on her Instagram page.
I'm at the wrong business.
Yeah, 2.4 million per post. Like mad. What she does really well, she announces like a new limited makeup item. So typically it's like eyeliners, lip seals, all of these kind
palettes,
of things.
Various things, yeah.
And she will post up on her live story that these are going to go up online, and there's only a limited amount of these particular products that are available. And what also happens as part of this is she's connecting to her brand, she's showing that it's live, and then surprise, surprise, she'll go up live about 20 or 30 minutes later and say that the website has crashed because there's so much traffic going to that website, which was obviously very unexpected because it's never happened before, but the website crashes every single time. So this heightens that sense of scarcity, and the website comes back online and all of the products are then sold out really quick. So there's like a dual layer of scarcity, which I just love.
Yeah.
So this is giveaways, holidays, flash sales, anything that's like a limited edition item. So if you're a collector of anything, this is where scarcity will sometimes come into place. Yeah. So eBay plays on scarcity and has played on scarcity for a really long time in terms of like bidding and creating time limits. Influencers just take it to a whole other level. Okay, so that's scarcity. Now, authority is using a sense of authority to establish creativity. So in psychology, the white lab coat effect, which was never actually white, it was grey. So this, in Milgram's compliance study, it was grey, it wasn't white. So this condones or portrays a sense of authority or professionalism. So I see lab coat, I think medical professionals or a pharmacist. We see like Kiehl's still do this. Other beauty brands like Clarins still do this. They're behind the counter. They're in a white lab coat and no, they do not have a pharmaceutical degree.
Yeah.
It's just to convey a sense of authority. Okay. When we try to establish credibility through authority, we can do this through the credentials that we have. So I've picked an influencer from the States. He's a medical influencer. He calls himself Dr. Mike, very approachable. And he has 4.5 million followers on Instagram and an abysmal 13.5 million on YouTube, because that's predominantly where he shares his time.
I was going to say, why didn't you use us, Dr. Liam and Dr. Nicola? And now I understand.
Because
we do not have those meta followers.
No, I don't. And I also don't like, while our credentials are used to convey authority and provide opinion, I don't feel like I use a sense of persuasion principles to convey intelligence all the time. I don't.
Do you not?
No. Oh, don't trust anything she says. So he uses his own expertise in terms of health advice. He also provides product recommendations. He will partner up with specific brands. So there's a little bit of the ethics person in me that goes,
Does he provide actual proper medical advice?
He provides actual proper medical advice.
That makes a nice change.
You've also had me verify it without my medical degree.
Yes.
So again, only trust me so much. So his users obviously trust his expertise. There's so many of these different influencers. Like there's a famous one, which you must have heard of this one, like Dr. Pimple Popper. Have you heard of her? But she has a massive following. She has a massive following.
I know.
And
I don't get it.
Like her personal Instagram page has like millions of Instagram followers, and then her actual professional pages and YouTube pages. And there's an element of cringe factor, but there's also medical advice because obviously everyone has skin. So it's not just kind of gross stuff. So you can sideline into that dark hole of videos. So in the UK, do you know who Joe Wicks is?
Yes, I remember him from lockdown. He's an exerciser person, right?
Yeah, he's an exerciser person.
I believe that's the official term that we use for these people.
An exerciser person. Yeah, he's a fitness expert. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So he's a personal trainer, but he's a dietitian as well. And he uses commitment. So in his own personal marketing strategy, outside of people following him, he will get you to do a small change in your lifestyle or your behavior, and then he will get you to build and build and build on that. So an initial commitment makes it a lot easier. So if I get you to put a flyer in the door of your house to commit to a particular product or service, or an initial buy-in, then it gives me an indication that you're more likely to continue with that, because you've already said, this is something that's of interest to me. So Joe Wicks, again, he's also known as the body coach. He has 5 million Instagram followers by comparison, and he does like workout challenges. He does lots in my own guilt and shame. Like I have some of his cookbooks. I've done some of the recipes.
Guilt and shame, are they good?
They're okay, but at the same time, like they're just basic recipes, to be quite honest. Like I'm a cook, so
you got
I'm
influenced.
just like, yeah. There's nothing revolutionary in them, to be quite honest. It's just standard reduce carbs, and exercise. Surprise.
Not the book for me then. I like my carbs.
No. But as a part of all of this, it's just getting an initial commitment that he uses to get you to actually purchase products, stay involved, continue with the following, and they are really effective. And particularly during lockdown, his following exploded because we could only do so much.
Yeah, and also he was using reciprocity right during lockdown because he was giving free workouts and stuff.
He was giving everything away for free,
which is brilliant. But also it reminds me, the commitment one reminds me of quit.ie, the quit smoking campaign in Ireland from the HSE, the Health Service Executive.
That website, it's just so poorly designed though.
The quit one, it used to be much better, but it works really well because you commit to the action publicly, like you sign up for it, and that makes you more likely to follow through with it as well. The campaign is one of the most successful in the world. Other countries have adopted it,
But like
the website's terrible, but the campaign itself and all of the services and the supports it offers is really good because it makes people publicly state that they're going to commit to giving up smoking. And once you've done that, it makes you more likely to follow through because of the commitment principle.
I just don't like any of the government websites. I just can't get over it because they're just so poorly designed. It's like they've forgotten all about UX. Like it's all links to get you off their websites. And it's actually important in terms of persuasion. Just FYI, design is important.
It is.
Closer to home, we can also look at the liking principle. So Vogue Williams, familiar with Vogue?
I know her name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm not a follower of people like this.
Okay, I'm gonna have to send you like a list of people.
I follow academics. Like academics are my influencers and fitness people.
I don't follow Vogue Williams, but I know who she is.
Yeah, I'm not very
Good
at
I
this.
have educating to do. She was originally on I can't deep dive into this. We don't have time. She's an Irish
I'll look her
influencer.
up, okay.
She's an Irish influencer, very
I do know
approachable
that,
personality, comes across as very authentic and genuine. As a result of this, she's viewed to have, or not, I'm going to say not viewed to have, has an honest persona. So very straightforward in how she behaves. She's authentic. We like her. We feel that she's genuine. We have a genuine connection with her as her followers. And that as a result of this, we're more receptive to recommendations or any endorsements that might potentially be there.
I think that's why I don't follow a whole bunch of influencers, because I do not need to be encouraged to buy more stuff.
But yeah. No,
I think it's deliberate.
Yeah, like you're kind of biased though as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if I pick out two products, right? So Vogue is sponsored by Fairy. Okay. Pretty seamless, pretty harmless. Okay. And HelloFresh. Do you know what HelloFresh is?
It's home
delivery
food
stuff.
delivery thingy. Yeah, words are clearly failing me.
Home
today.
delivery thingy, okay, influencer thing. Like, you just need to stop.
Yeah.
So she endorses these products in relation to her family. Like, there's nothing sinister about Fairy Liquid, right?
Yeah.
Just and then talking about like washing pods and all the standard kind of stuff. We see those adverts all the time. Parents, kind of young mothers, all can relate to this exact same thing. Busy lifestyle. This is what I need to do. These are the ones I buy. The likability of Vogue Williams' persona transfers over to that particular brand.
Of course.
Okay. So these both rely on like home life convenience, and particularly with the two products. And it's really kind of perfect product placement. There's no kind of like sinisterness in terms of like the product absolutely does not align to Vogue's kind of brand, and it fits within the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's liking. Now, social proof is another one. So do you know who Maura Higgins is?
I do. Okay. I do know who Maura Higgins is. She's brilliant.
So social proof is another one. So Maura Higgins is famous for like Love Island, I'm a Celeb. She's a great example of social proof. I picked out two brands again, Boohoo and MAC. So she has 4.6 million followers as of this week.
For her.
Now, these two both leverage popularity and the previous principle of liking. And they essentially kind of transpose our trust in her as being perceived as incredibly genuine onto that brand as well, with the principle of liking. But it's a piggyback endorsement. We know what's happening. It's a transparent process. There's nothing kind of deceptive around social proof.
Yeah.
It's just, this is the brand I'm using. You want to be like me, also use this particular brand. Okay. The last one is Unity. So the one I actually like the most is Unity. So it's this sense of shared common beliefs and values. Are you a CrossFitter? You described yourself as a gym bro earlier.
Yeah,
so.
my gym used to be a CrossFit gym. It's not officially linked to it anymore, which I'm quite happy about, but it's a CrossFit style gym.
Okay, CrossFit style gym is still CrossFit.
It's not.
Now, do you have any specific language or terms that are linked? Okay.
Yeah, we have the WODs, the workout of the day. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Okay. So this sense of shared belonging and community absolutely fits into Unity.
100%.
It really does. So I apologize if you're a CrossFitter. I am absolutely not. I don't get it. Like this sense of like Kool-Aid fitness. Sorry.
It's just people liking each other. The people in my community, in my gym community, are absolutely lovely. That's what is really nice about it.
No, if I'm in the gym, I put my headphones in and you're just not to speak to me.
Sometimes they're the only people I talk to in a day.
So one influencer, I think, who draws on the final principle really well is James Doyle Fitness, otherwise known as Protein Bar.
Protein Bar.
And so he originally did a collaboration after this, and he kind of became famous because of that, with MyProtein. So they're obviously a fitness brand. So Protein Bar is a nickname for our Irish TikTok star, James Doyle. So he's known for his gym content and his strong Leitrim accent. He gained popularity for his fitness advice, particularly in the way he obviously pronounces protein bar, which led to this protein bar trend, okay, which kind of exploded quite quickly. And it pulls on that final principle of unity really well. So this sense of Irishness that comes both from his accent, but also like the way he behaves and like
his sense of humor.
Like, I think like he's a big fan of an Aircom kind of GA jersey. Like he fits the Irishness stereotype really, really well. What is slightly different is that he also discusses other areas. So in relation to like fitness, something that comes across quite a lot is mental health, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and that allows him to both connect to an audience from a unity perspective, but also then connect into the wider kind of fitness community and industry and people who are on their own fitness journeys too. So I think he portrays himself in quite a genuine way. So as I've said, he's from Leitrim. He just recently reached 1 million followers on TikTok, and he put up a post where he
discussed this milestone, and I'm not going to even attempt a Leitrim accent. I don't think anyone needs to hear that. So he said, if anyone told you that some fella in Leitrim would have over a million followers, you'd think that they had notions. And notions, if you've never heard of notions before, it's basically like delusions of grandeur. After 18 months and 1,900 posts, I finally reached one of the craziest goals imaginable. Thank you so much for your support. I can't put into words the fact that having 1 million people following you is absolutely crazy, but to have such consistent support. So the consistent aspect of that is really important. My videos and at my live events, it's just been mind-blowing. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything, and here's to the next milli. So it's like this really consistent, genuine response back, and I don't think that that's been like actively constructed. I think it's just a genuine connection to that audience.
Yeah.
So this does draw on the principle of consistency in liking. So not only do we like his posts and his collaborations, they also connect really well to his personal sense of identity. Have you seen any of the content from Bloom?
Not really. My algorithm does not tend to feed me gardening stuff because it knows I kill everything it's trying to save the plants.
Mine is showing me loads of stuff.
I can
from
imagine.
Bloom.
Yeah.
And as part of that, James Doyle was actually at Bloom, and he starts out by saying that it's so funny. He talks about how he drinks a glass of milk, or he like drinks a glass of milk really quickly. So he sculls this big glass of milk, and then he says that milk is really great for health benefits. It gives you strong bones and muscles. He flexes, so it connects us both to the Irishness and to the sense of fitness identity. So it's really clever. So it connects back to those fitness origins, and it's a collaboration with the National Dairy Council. So it actually then kind of starts to go off the deep end, and he's milking a cow. I can't remember if it's a real cow or a fake cow. I think it's a real cow.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And then it like continues on to promote like our consumption of dairy. So I think that is a really clever collaboration because it draws on so many of these principles, and it's not like shoving them in your face either. It's actually drawing on the parts that are quite or less Machiavellian than you would view in other areas. It's just very clever.
Yeah, it kind of fits the authentic and real personality with an authentic and real product, and does it in an Irish way that's very authentic as well, but also very funny.
But it doesn't go outside of the box for that particular for him as an influencer. So he still does all the other stuff like fitness tips, motivating followers, giving tips to people who are different levels of fitness experience. And then he does reciprocity. So where he gives out like fitness codes and stuff like that. And then he has his own kind of like store for his branded content too. There's this area that he also does really well, which is looking at parasocial relationships with influencers. So this one-sided relationship that we view, and particularly a way to break this down or to make it seem more genuine or to increase how connected you are is to increase levels of intimacy. And as a result of that, your level of trust in that person.
So by like self-disclosing or giving away information about yourself helps increase that feeling closeness.
Spoilers.
Oh, sorry.
So he shared a video about a cut. So you know what a cut is?
I do.
Yeah. So this is where you try to drop weight ahead of a competition or summer. In a video he posted, he speaks about how he was in the best fitness or shape of his life, but when he looked in the mirror, he was kind of fat shaming himself. He was degrading himself. He had low self-esteem, and how that was impacting him. And he outside of this now is discussing how he knows that was body dysmorphia. It's also quite unique because people in the fitness industry, not as a sweeping statement, but generally don't talk about areas like this on a continuous basis anyway. Sometimes that'll be a part of their fitness journey as well. So he opened up about feelings of body dysmorphia and previous experience of eating disorders, which made him quite vulnerable for someone who has 1 million people watching that. So this allows you to connect and kind of break that glass ceiling between influencer and audience and make yourself really vulnerable. Now, literally this morning, he put up a story on his Instagram where he's doing several runs as part of a cut. So this is interval training. So interval training is like if you were ever in school, do you remember the bleep test? So this is very like the bleep test at its most extreme level. So he's doing these back and forth, He looks absolutely exhausted, verge of getting sick, out of breath, red face, just not this beautiful picture that you would expect an influencer to put up online. And what this does is it breaks through that self-presentation barrier where it's not actively curated, which we've previously discussed.
And it shows how hard it actually is and how hard he actually has to work, which is really nice and authentic again, and connecting so that when people are in the gym struggling, as I might have experienced recently, they can feel like he knows what they're going through. He's not some perfect scion of fitness who never feels pain anymore.
No, but it's also just showing that if you're in that fitness journey, that or you're maintaining or trying to achieve a goal, that at no point is it easy, even when you're
when you're super fit.
Yeah, it does not do that or allow you to achieve that in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, consistency. And this is not consistency in terms of the principle of kind of consistency and liking. This is consistent posting. So scheduling, sharing content on a regular basis. So the person doesn't actually disappear from our lives. It keeps us engaged with our own journey.
Yeah.
We have a continuous update that allows us to kind of, like you would be chatting to one of your friends, you know, or you're clicking into your stories and you know what that particular person is doing. The influencer does it in the exact same way.
This is why I will never be an influencer. Just not consistent.
I'm terrible. Are there any influencers you follow who do any of these 5 things?
Oh, definitely, yeah. So I tend to follow smaller influencers, but some of the bigger ones, like one of the fitness ones that I follow is a guy called Ben Carpenter, who's great. He does a lot of posts debunking fitness nonsense.
Okay.
But he also does stuff where like people are posting like rippled ab shots, and he shows how lighting achieves so much of it, and how you can go from looking kind of blobby to like super, super fit in about 5 seconds with the right lighting and so on. So I love that kind of content. I love the authenticity about what's going on behind the scenes. People talking about like you don't need to eat perfectly all the time, and what their fun things are that they do, and the way they get around eating healthily. You know, I follow a lot of educational and social justice influence. Well, I don't know if they're influencers, content creators. Certainly, they influence opinion rather than influencing you to buy stuff. I don't really follow.
They're still an influencer.
They are, yeah. I don't really
Opinion
follow any
is
of
just
that.
as important.
Like try and get me to buy stuff.
But they're changing an attitude and behavior.
But they're changing attitudes and behavior, and they tend to be very authentic and share personal stories, personal obstacles they've overcome, their journeys, etc. And I really fall for that stuff very much. I love that stuff.
I don't think you fall for it.
I know.
You align to it. So I'm going
Yes.
to switch away from the influencer and back to us. So how are we in this relationship? So it's not just all persuasion techniques and principles of liking, authority, and like marketing doing it to us. It's actually how we interpret these messages. So I'm going to put my academic hat back on just for a minute. So there are 2 what we call theoretical frameworks. So a way in which we plan and understand a concept. So one is the elaboration likelihood model. The other is the heuristic semantic model.
They're so snappily named.
Yeah, I know. The ELM and the HSM is what I'm going to call them now. The elaboration likelihood model, it has 2 roots. One is called the central root, and one is called the peripheral root. So they basically assess how we interact with information. So the cues we receive, whether we have the ability to focus in on content or information. So these either make them more kind of complicated or less complicated. So us as an audience, do we have a high ability to think about a message? So I get you to... It's a political campaign. I want to get you to change your voting behavior. If you typically rely on facts, figures, a clear, concise argument, and you have, importantly, you have the ability to decode that argument, you're aligning to the central root of persuasion in the elaboration likelihood model. So we look at your cognitive responses to it, your existing attitude or belief, and whether we can change even part of those. That should lead to behavior change. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, the other side of the route, so the peripheral route, that route involves lower involvement in processing. So this is kind of where we start to see kind of superficial components come in. That is what leads to belief change. So for example, the same political argument, the facts, the figures, all the lovely stuff. If I instead give you less facts and figures and information, and I put a shiny celebrity in, or
more emotion,
more emotion, not so much like the heuristic semantic model looks at more emotion a bit more. The elaboration likelihood model actually looks at more superficial cues like
attractiveness.
It literally it's like how sexy do you find the person who's telling you the argument, and that actually starts to influence how you perceive it, whether you pay attention to the argument or you get distracted or not, and your actual attention span to process that information. So that leads to behavior and attitude change.
Gotcha.
There are also
discussions where they more recently proposed where we have both a central and a peripheral component. I'm trying to convince you to change your attitude and voting behavior. You rely on the facts and figures, and now I use someone who you find beautiful to convey that argument. Are you still going to be able to focus purely on central root, or is it peripheral, or am I going to use a combination of these factors to get you to change your attitude and behavior? So that should be more efficient. Okay, so you're just imagining who that particular person is, I can tell. So this model is actually from 1981. Right, so this is quite old. The elaboration likelihood model is so relevant. We saw it in like the same-sex marriage referendum, the repeal the eighth referendums, where emotional arguments were used and factual arguments were used across a number of different avenues. So similarly to the elaboration likelihood model, we have the heuristic systematic model. So that's Bonner, Moskowitz and Chaikin, or Bonner et al. So this is back in 1995, and it looks at how we process that information. It's our motivation and our capacity to do it, and whether we importantly have the motivation and capacity. That's also important. So they say we get a piece of information in, and we should be able to be thoughtful with it or mindful, have an analytical approach to deconstruct that argument. So it relies on mental shortcuts. It relies on superficial cues as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say, with the amount of information we process these days, it's quite an assumption to make that we're going to be thinking about most of it in any sort of depth at all.
But I think people are terrible at thinking about anything in depth at all. Time, like scarcity principle. Throw that in on top of this, and people don't.
Yeah.
Lots of people don't make their decisions on political parties until the very sometimes the morning of elections, and go into the ballot box, and they're reading the short summaries. Or there was a great tool, what was that called? Where you would punch in, you would do a quiz about your political ideals based on where you were from. And importantly, you relied on the trust in the website to do it, which was not...
And that the candidates' answers that they put into it were true.
Yeah.
Also, which, you know...
No, I didn't think about that.
It was called Which Candidate.
Which Candidate, yeah. So if we put this into a online setting, so it does lead to things like cognitive bias, familiarity bias. We're going to touch on those later, don't worry. Something that already aligns to our pre-existing beliefs or frequency. So if we put this into an online setting, product or service, we start to begin to compare some of those in an online format, and whether marketing can facilitate this process further. There are, and I'm going to touch on it more so in Persuasion later, high persuasions. So how we can now start to use things like Gen AI and large language models to influence the type of content that we're seeing, drawing on things like the peripheral root of persuasion, my ability to construct arguments. Do I need an emotional argument to counteract that emotional sentiment if it's emotionally driven for me, or do I need a factual argument? Or to add an even more complex layer, do I need factual and emotional arguments within the same message together? Okay, so this changing someone's attitude or behavior is not straightforward.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's really not.
Now, young kids, what comes to mind when I talk about persuasion and kids?
How easily persuaded kids are to want stuff. So like all the sweets at the supermarket checkout aisle, and how much kids want stuff when they see it. Junk food they ban at certain periods of time during the day because they know it puts parents under pressure to buy them. Supermarkets, I know, did a voluntary ban of sweets around supermarket checkouts for a long time, but it seems to have fallen by the wayside.
Ah, Jesus.
Because
Dunn's
they know
is like a maze of sweets before you get to the till.
And what helps children helps me. If they ban sweets at the checkout, it's good for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, we won't attack ourselves. So Persuasion, actually, it does focus on adults. Now, these same 7 persuasion principles by Cialdini, we can apply those into influencers to focus on young kids. So gaming influencers particularly, we see a lot of it on YouTube or Twitch, the kind of live streaming platforms. Here's a new game I'm playing, or just simply watch me playing this particular game, and there will be product endorsement within it. Okay. The Internet Safety Office here, Webwise, love Webwise. Like, make me one of you. I don't know. So they focus on providing resources for young children. Okay. They have one which is called HTML Heroes, which is like, I love it so much because it's these 2 USB keys doing a rap, and it's this like very like Run DMC style kind of set up with these 2 USB keys. Like, kids don't even know what HTML is really at that stage, like, let alone what a USB key looks like. And it's just so good. I feel like the references are for us. But it focuses on
like one of the USB keys goes out and he buys a pair of trainers and the other person buys another pair of trainers, and they were both being promoted by the same influencer one week and the following one another week. Okay, so influencing trends and knowing that these are paid endorsements. So it talks through in this very eloquent rap what
This is all so bizarre.
it's so good. But it like, go and have a look at it. It's really, really good. But it's focusing on the different areas, like looking out for paid endorsements, ads, sponsorship, and looking behind particular adverts. So this is actually teaching the heuristics or heuristic processing model, and it's the elaboration likelihood model that they're saying stop, think, check.
Yeah.
Look under the kind of the hood if there's any
doubt.
Not any doubt, but anything that doesn't kind of add up. They're intuitive thinking as well. So trying to kind of encourage that.
Yeah.
Ironically, it's only until about the age of 12 that they should be able to like fully operationalize some of these concepts. So it's effective, but it's just kind of like road signaling to some of these issues.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to move to someone you love. Would you?
One of my favorite grifters
I'm going
of
to
all
apply
time.
this into RFK Jr. He's a controversial figure,
To say the least.
particularly amongst vaccines. So Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he's been in the spotlight about making misleading claims about vaccines and why people believe these false claims, how we counter them. This is where we're going to get into. For anyone who's not familiar, Nick, do you want to tell us who RFK Jr. is and why should we know who he is?
Unfortunately, we know who he is. And if you don't, you should be very glad. And I hope you never have to find out. He's a Class A grifter who started out as an environmental lawyer and actually started out doing quite good work, but somehow made his way fully into grifting and anti-vaccine activism, partly because his own kid suffered from quite ill health. And so he was trying to find solutions, but he really went off track and just ignored medical advice altogether. He's made a lot of money of his anti-vaccine activism, estimates of about 1.2 million in the last couple of years. There's currently a big lawsuit happening, and even with him as the Secretary of Health and Human Services in the US, he could still make a fortune off that lawsuit if it eventually gets resolved.
Right.
Because, ethics doesn't matter anymore over there. He is also a major conspiracy theorist, so it's a really great person to have running a health service altogether. Yeah, so that's who the very, very short. There's many other things about him, but the very short version.
So he ran for president as well. Yeah. He ran as an independent, and obviously everyone knows who his ancestor is. So the original JFK.
And the original RFK.
Yeah. But he has tried to draw off familiarity, consensus, liking. He, in his campaign adverts, used to show like old family videos with his like parents and grandparents, this kind of community aspect around things like Thanksgiving. There's like a video of them all playing American football. He also superimposed himself into JFK's original campaign videos. Seriously? As well. Like it was really clever from a marketing perspective. The reds, the like whole red, white and blue aspects and all of the marketing, that's actually not what I'm focusing on. But he did that really well in his campaigns, and obviously was seen to be famous enough to, or have enough sway to be brought into the existing government.
Well, he's also nuts enough to be brought into the existing government.
Yeah, so I'm trying to align logic to why he's there.
I'm taking the other route.
So he has made lots of misleading claims about vaccines. Yeah. So conspiracy theories on vaccine safety, despite the overwhelming knowledge.
Overwhelming evidence for vaccines. Yeah.
I just just efficacy, safety, medical trials, all of the stuff that we know exists. He also downplayed measles. So there was a significant measles outbreak in Texas, and he said it was not unusual at all, which obviously is very far from the truth. This was in relation to measles, and particularly the measles vaccine and autism. And he spread a lot of those conspiracy theories. He also spread a lot of misinformation around COVID. Again, this is not, we're not going to focus on misinformation. But he did
we might come back to him.
Yeah.
We could do a whole episode.
We can do a whole case study with him and a few different cronies. But he said that the COVID-19 vaccines, he has a non-profit. It's called Children's Health Defense. And it has, my favorite thing is it has its own fact-checking page on factcheck.org because of how often people go and kind of search for these.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, why would you believe a false or misleading claim? Specifically from RFK?
Because maybe you have an underlying fear, like you're worried about your kids. People worry about their kids. They worry about them getting sick. They worry about something going wrong with them. And so you're more vulnerable and open to hearing that kind of messaging. And then he is a political elite. He's an authority figure. And so you might view him as being someone who's relevant to listen to. He's been talking about this stuff for a long time. He aligns himself with similar dodgy people in the area like Andrew Wakefield. And so he may come across as someone who knows a lot about it. And so an authority on the, or an expert in the area.
And he's now going to be able to use his authority as the Secretary of Health.
Yeah.
And that does convey authority.
Of course it does, or at least it used to.
And he will certainly be able to influence medical decisions
Yeah.
and policy decision. So about how we give public health information is going to be influenced by that.
Yeah.
So I have 4 factors or 4 areas I'm going to touch on for why we are susceptible. And I'm going to keep these quite high level because we've already deep dived into persuasion. So the first, in terms of psych factors, confirmation bias. So you've touched on it a bit. So something that pre-aligns to my existing beliefs. I already have heard something or that is relevant in this space already. It doesn't contradict any of my existing understanding or facts. So simply adding to that. So if someone already has doubts about a vaccine, they're more likely to believe or share that information. So there was a lot of discussion around the responses people were having to vaccines, and people in the States were taking the vaccine to not get sick, which in itself is the massive misconception. So vaccines don't prevent people from getting sick, they reduce the impacts of illness. So the more you respond to a vaccine, ironically, is the more antibodies you build, so the better your resistance will be. So I had really bad reactions to the vaccines, and I felt very kind of fluey and the kind of muscle aches, the whole lot. And I was actually sitting there going, oh, I'm really happy about this because I know I'm going to have good responses to the vaccine, which was great. But that doesn't prevent me from ever catching an illness. So that's not how vaccines work. But if you don't understand how vaccines work and you're reading all this news about how people are having bad responses to vaccines without that understanding, you may be more likely to fall under confirmation bias.
And I think another way that it happens, a route into vaccine hesitancy, is women often have poor experiences in healthcare settings, particularly through childbirth not being listened to. There's lots of women's health issues where women just aren't listened to, aren't diagnosed for 8-9 years, things like endometriosis. And so they often have an inherent, not fear, but like feeling that the health system's unreliable and the doctors don't care about them. And that is one route that a lot of the vaccine deniers pull on to draw women in to this kind of belief system.
This relies on us doing our own research, spending time to go and look at it. And unless we have this information freely accessible from a non-biased source that we know is non-biased, the likelihood is that we will fall for confirmation bias. And it could be like left-leaning or right-leaning confirmation bias too. Okay. Now, another factor is motivated reasoning. So where our emotional state influences how we process information or how we feel emotionally charged towards an issue. So if I make a claim and it evokes a response in you like fear, anger, hostility, sometimes people are more likely to believe it, even if they know it's wrong.
Well, emotion overrides your rational thinking, right?
It depends on the type of person you are, but
it's more likely.
It's more likely to. We then need an emotional argument to counteract that emotion. So if something is sensational or emotionally charged, misinformation content then spreads far more quickly. So add this to confirmation bias. It already pre-aligns to my existing beliefs to a point. It now makes me angry, or it makes me concerned, fearful, skeptical. I put my tinfoil hat on and I hide under the table. I'm more likely to share that content. Okay, so this conspiracy theory component. We also have 2 concepts: the illusionary truth effect, or what we call familiarity bias. So the tendency to believe false or misleading information, the more it's repeated to us. So if I keep spouting the same rhetoric argument, even if it's false, you're more likely to continue seeing it. And then when we draw on our existing knowledge to make a decision or form an attitude towards a particular behavior, even though it's false and misleading, because it's still there in our minds, we start to believe that it's true, even if we know better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like your brain just processes it more smoothly or something because you've seen it so many times and it makes it easier to believe or something.
But it streamlines it. So
The final principle is one, or final factor is one that you'd be familiar with. So Brandini's law. Do you want to explain what Brandini's law is?
Yeah, I love this law. It is, so it's also known as the bullshit asymmetry principle. And it was coined in 2013 by Alberto Brandolini. It emphasizes the effort of debunking misinformation in comparison to the relative ease of creating it in the first place. So the law is the amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude bigger than that needed to produce it. So RFK Jr. can say vaccines cause autism over and over and over again and say, oh, there's no good research being done to disprove this. But in order to refute that, you have to talk about the original paper that was produced by Wakefield, how bad that was, the flawed methodology, the fact that he was being paid for it, all of the issues with it, the fact that he was stripped of his medical license because of his nonsense around anti-vaccination, the research that's been done to show that vaccinations are actually effective and not harmful. Like, there's a huge amount of effort and work that has to go into it. So you've got all these anti-vax people talking all the time and saying that vaccines are a problem. But then you need a lot of qualified experts to try and refute it. And it's a massive amount of effort. And it's kind of like fighting a rising tide.
But in other words, like, it's a lot easier to spread false claims than it is to actually debunk them. So with misinformation, particularly in vaccine misinformation, a single statement can go viral. It doesn't necessarily need to take hours, if not days. It takes a significant amount more time to refute that particular claim.
And it's usually not as compelling because there's nuance in truth. Whereas when you're making a misclaim, it can be very like emotional, black and white, very like vociferous about something, and you're not saying, well, in certain cases this, or if you look at it a bit more deeply, that.
But we can look like this is all going to start to come down the misinformation path, which I want to come down separately. Yeah. But like, there are different kind of triggers or prompts we can give people around misinformation to know whether something is a false or misleading claim. This is just a taster.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's
come back
save
later for more.
What can we actually do? So in this kind of scenario, it's the same advice we give young kids: fact check. So like, he has his own pages on factcheck.org, which is in itself is concerning. So check the credibility of a website, the author, when was it last updated, who is that information come from, is it from a trusted health perspective or professional, or is it from someone who's being given a paid promotion, or is there, like, within disinformation, is there an ideological reason why they're trying to convey that message?
Or a monetary reason.
Yeah. Educate yourself and other people. And this is not just like talk down to someone from an ivory tower. This is share accurate information with people, break down the messages that they're sharing or sending with each other to make more informed decisions. Promoting media literacy then is an effective strategy. So critical thinking, skepticism, let's go and kind of break this all down. Let's teach people to question information, come back to it, accept, rather than just simply accepting something as being true from the first place. So someone from a position of authority tells you something, question your doctor, question the mental health professional that you're working with, anyone. Don't just simply accept information as fact. I think that's a big fallacy that people have.
But I think healthy skepticism, rather than saying nothing anyone tells me is true either. There's like a balance to be found, because like, you get people who are like, I do my own research, and that just means they look at weirdos on YouTube who aren't telling them the truth either.
But your GP says something to you, you trust the information your GP gives you. You can still question or ask a question of, is there anything else this could be? That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying go and debunk everything that your health professional tells you, because they have spent years in that profession. You have not. Then use correction strategies. So this is, if you're good at an argument, you're good at a debate, go and have a discussion that is polite and informative. So debunk misinformation when you see it. Provide clear, concise corrections. Don't go down a rabbit hole. Go, this is what this person has said. Here's two sources that are fact-checked and contradict that information. Then avoid repeating the false claim without correction. So if you are going to share a piece of misinformation, absolutely fine, you can share it, but make sure it's very clear that you're correcting it and that it is not accurate. And I would advise people to like share a screenshot of an article rather than a link to an article. Okay. Repetition reinforces the beliefs in those falsehoods.
Exactly.
And that's pretty much it.
Cool.
I've rant done. Sorry, like when I have topics to discuss, they tend to come out as like rants, don't they?
Yeah, we get exercised about stuff here.
Yeah. So this is the emotional, factual arguments that we've been talking about. So I should have persuaded you to look positively and more skeptically at your influencers at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I got to go look at Vogue Williams now. So got to go do my own research.
So much work to do.
Yeah.
Okay. You've been listening to In Bits, the podcast that deconstructs our digital lives, or at least attempts to. You'll find us every second week from wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on social media. So at In Bits Podcast on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. This episode was produced and edited by Owen Hurley. Thank you very much to Owen for our lovely intro music, and we'll see you soon.